Hello, hello, hello. Can anybody hear me? Testing one, two, three.
Hi,
Hi, Katura Wilson. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, just fine, just fine.
That's good.
Giving your other colleagues an opportunity to sign in a few more minutes.
Yes, sir.
And if they don't sign in 5 minutes, then we're going to start without them. They'll have to catch up. So let's give them about 5 more minutes and then we'll begin.
Good evening.
Okay, looks like we have a quorum. Good afternoon, everybody.
I still can't get on the computer. Yeah, on my phone. As soon as the
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's one so far.
Yes, I can hear you.
good day, yes.
Good night. I can hear you. Good
And
afternoon. I can hear you.
good afternoon, everybody. Welcome aboard. Let me just begin by putting up some information for you so that you can have some idea of who will be chatting with you for the next couple of weeks. Can everybody see that information?
Yes.
Okay, please take a note of that somewhere. That is my personal information. My name is Samuel Wilkinson, and I shall be your lecturer for the next 3 sessions. And for some reason, I've been chosen to give you some blah, blah, blah on risk management of all things. And so that's what we'll be talking about for the next 3 sessions in one form or another. And if you need to reach me for any reason during that time or after, you can email me at that email address. I'm always checking it. Or you can call me, text me, whatever is good for you at that number. Please make a note of it somewhere just in case you need it. When you're done, let me know, then I can move that off the screen and we can move on with a little housekeeping. Then we get into our discussion. Everybody has that information?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So who will be a lecturer for the next few weeks? I've been doing this for a while now. I started when my hair was black and now it's not black. So I've been doing this for a little while. I don't know where the time is gone, but I certainly welcome and congratulate you guys for finding ways to be better at what you do. Okay? Because this is just one of the ways you get to do that. So welcome aboard. And it is certainly my pleasure to be a part of whatever you are going to get out of the CIFP course. So first things first, I'm going to call your name, and then you're going to introduce yourself to me and tell me anything you want, like who you are, what kind of work you do, why you're doing this course in the first place, things like that. Okay, so feel free. All right, let's start with Shanika Ferguson. Are you there, Shanika?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, Shanika, introduce yourself to me, us.
Okay.
You
Okay,
first.
I'm Shanika Ferguson, and I work for the Bahamas government.
Okay,
I reside in Freeport, Grand Bahama,
okay,
and I work in management capacity.
okay,
And I decided to take this course because I was interested in assisting others more into how to save and better manage their finances.
and you're definitely in the right place for sure. Okay, because my understanding is that this course has been designed to a great extent for you to be able to do just that. And so hopefully, when you're done, you'll be helpful to many Grand Bahamians who no doubt have a lot of blah, blah, blah to deal with for one reason or another, like the rest of us. And
Yes,
maybe you might even get a small fee out of it at the end of the day. Who knows, Shanika?
yes, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely. Help the poor and make let the rich pay. How's that?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Is that Shakira Ferguson? Did I say that correct, Shakira?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Shakira, introduce yourself. By the way, Shakira, you may not be aware of it, but I see something that looks like Wilskam. Is that your maiden name? Or
Yes, that's my maiden name.
interestingly enough, when it all comes together, it looks like a foreign language, like a Russian word. Did you know that?
No, not really.
No, it's the first thing that crossed my mind. I said, it looks Russian. Okay, Shakira, introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Shakira Ferguson. I work at SuperValue head office in the
Okay.
accounts department. I've been with the company about 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, about 20 years.
You only sound like you're about 21 or something. You sure?
Boy, yes, 20
Wow,
years been working at
unbelievable.
SuperValue. And
Okay.
I took this certification to enhance my career and to lean more into financial advising and hopefully bring some benefit to our office and organization.
Indeed, indeed. Well, you're definitely in the right place. And my advice to you is the same as Shanika. Do it free for the poor and let the rich pay. How's that?
I agree.
Because we keep giving stuff to the rich all the time for some reason
That's right.
and leaving. All right. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard. You're definitely in the right place.
All right, thank you.
Okay, this is Letitia, is it? Lewis? Letitia? Okay, Letitia's not here yet. Probably still stuck in that place. They get stuck there. All right, Sandy Miller, are you there? Okay, Sandy is not joining us yet. What about Ernst Pierre?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Mr. Pierre, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. Can't complain.
Excellent. I don't want to mess up your first name. How do you pronounce it?
That was perfect.
Ernst
That was
as
a
an
perfect
N?
first try, actually.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well,
It-
welcome aboard. Introduce
Thank
yourself
you.
to us and all the
Sure.
other young ladies in this group.
All right. So my name is Ernst Pierre. Been in banking for about 10 years. I currently work at Fidelity Bank. And from a professional perspective, I want to become more well-rounded as a finance professional.
Indeed.
But most personally, in terms of a personal aspect, I want to gather as much knowledge as I can in the art of personal finance and become certified. I've always had a passion for it, and my friends would always tell me, "Well, you need to get certified because you're so good at, advising people on the right direction in terms of their personal finances."
Indeed.
And I figured this is the best time to do it, to actually, put some credential next to my name that would, hold a little bit more weight.
Absolutely. It will definitely carry weight because, in the Western world, especially, we like paper. We can actually show people that we know and they'll still say, yeah, but you don't have any paper. Yeah, that's
Right.
great, but you don't have any paper, Pierre. Go and get some and then come back. So yes, you're definitely in the right place. What do you do at Fidelity, by the way?
I am currently a loan officer.
And this is definitely going to be right up your alley because you're already doing a lot of this now, aren't you?
Right.
In
And,
one
and
form
the
or
funny
another.
thing about it, is prior to me, this is my second stint as a loan officer, but prior to that, I did a bit of financial planning with Fidelity. So this is now it's actually at a smaller scale in terms of we typically deal with coaching our existing clients.
Indeed.
So this right here is what I'm used to, but of course this is a lot more in depth. So
Yes.
I welcome the challenge.
Oh yeah, and all of this other crazy stuff that you're going to gather along the way will only add to everybody's repertoire actually, because the world that you guys live in is very unpredictable. Yes, you don't know where you'll be tomorrow. So a little bit of information never hurts. Okay, by all means. Uh, I used to be a lending officer a million years ago, many decades ago. Unbelievable! I can't believe all the time has gone by already. But yes, so I understand completely where you are. Good stuff and good luck. All right. Tanika Smith.
Hi, good day.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, just fine. Introduce yourself to me first, then the rest.
Okay. My name is Tanika Smith. I am a
Tanika, I'm sorry. I just Tanika that to hell. Tanika, yes.
Tanika. Yes.
Tanika.
I'm a banker by profession. I work to Commonwealth Bank. I've been working there for 13 years now.
Okay.
And I decided to do the course because I've always had an interest in financial planning. So I just wanted to learn more about it and become certified.
Definitely. Sounds good. And if my memory serves me, any certification you get or any qualification you get is always helpful at a bank called Commonwealth Bank. Is that still true?
More or less.
Just, just for your info, this is smile. She knows what I mean. Just for your information, Tanika, long time ago, that same bank where you work these days used to be located in a little small building through Dunmore Lane off Bay Street, a little tiny little building. I don't know if they ever talk about the history where it all began, but they should.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Good. Do
They do.
they have a picture of that building?
I've never seen it.
That is most unfortunate. When you go to work tomorrow, Danica,
Uh-huh.
a little birdie told you that they started in a little building through Dunmore Lane. Please go and get a picture of it if they don't have one and put it in a very prominent place.
Okay, will do.
Absolutely. And then tell them give you a cash prize for suggesting it.
Yeah, I'll definitely add that part.
All right, welcome aboard. Okay, let's see. This is Kikita. Did I say that right, Kikita? Kikita.
Nikita,
Is it Nikita?
and yes, and Nikita.
I'm sorry, the Institute has it as K-I-K.
Oh no, Nikita.
N-I-K. No wonder you didn't answer right away. I don't blame you. That's not me. All right, Nikita Smith. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Tanika Smith. I work at Providence Advisors, and I decided to take this course so I can get the tools necessary to enhance in my journey to become more involved in the company with portfolio management and financial planning.
I was about to ask you, what the heck do they do there at Providence?
We are a pension administration and wealth management company.
Pension administration, indeed.
Yeah, yes,
Do you have any trust clients as well?
we do. We
Okay.
do. We have trust clients, and two of our biggest clients are the hotel pension funds.
Wow, indeed. Yeah, so that's a really cool place to be, for sure. And this stuff, sorry, I got that really cool thing for my baby. He's 25. He actually is really cool. He try to keep me hip
Mm,
and modern for some reason. Okay. Yeah, so you're definitely in the right place. Nikita, good luck. Sure you guys will be fine. Thank you. Maud Smith. Is there a Maud Smith in the room?
I'm here.
Hello, Maud Smith. Introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Maud Smith. I am a banker by profession. I currently do a little bit of, I currently coordinate and oversee our financial coaching, financial planning program at the organization that I work for. So one, I wanted to get my papers to become certified in the course and to dive deeper into the whole financial planning process or aspect of it.
Indeed, like what the hell's going on? Yes.
Pardon?
Yeah, like get deeper to find out like what the hell's really going on.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Then you're in the right place. I hope the sessions you've had so far have added some stuff to your repertoire that you
They
can
shall
do.
have.
Yeah. And suffice it to say that any discussion whatsoever, no matter how lousy it might be on risk management, has to be helpful because we're all surrounded by it every single day in every aspect of our lives. Our jobs, no less risky, with all kinds of risk issues involved. So you're just picking up where you started with this information that you need to help you to become better financial planners for sure. Okay, welcome aboard, Maud Smith. Katura Wilson. Did I say that right?
Hi. Hi. Yes,
Katura?
you did.
Okay.
Yes, you did. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Katura Wilson. I'm actually very different from everybody else in here. I think I'm the only one that's in the tourism and hospitality industry. I've been in the industry for 20 years.
20 years
Currently,
again?
yes.
It's my
Currently,
first.
I'm a coupier,
Okay.
a casino dealer. I have a bachelor's in economics and finance, and
Wait,
I've
hold
been
it.
trying.
Sorry, Katura.
Hi,
Is this a true story or are you just making this up for this class? And me?
I am. This is a true story.
You have a BA in what?
In economics and finance. I also have other certifications, data analytics and everything. I've
So-
tried to transition into the financial arena, but to no avail. It seems that everyone says I'm lacking the experience in the financial industry because all of my credentials are in the tourism and hospitality industry. So I'm hoping that by attaining this certification, it would give me the foot in the door that I need because I freelance, I help small and medium-sized businesses with their books. And also I've had several small businesses myself. We had a wholesale juice company. Our vendors were Bahamas, Outback, So I've done pretty well in the arena. So with the certification, I want to officially and formally be able to assist others. Because
My.
as you said, that certification, that means everything.
Yes, for better or for worse.
Yeah,
You still interested in getting into financial services industry?
I am very interested. I am actually tired of getting off 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely, that's only one of the problems. Absolutely. And somebody with a first degree in economics and finance, and now this thing, it is not supposed to be that difficult.
I did not think that it would be. I said I probably was doing something wrong, but it just wasn't meant to be. After this course, I'm sure that doors will open. I'm positive.
And if they don't open eventually, then maybe you should close your eyes and kick a few down, see what happens.
Okay, I will.
Maybe, maybe
I will.
that might work. But yeah, keep on trying. Remember, we have retail banks, we have offshore banks, and we have regulators like the central bank and securities commissions and the insurance commission, all these places.
Yes,
Okay,
sir. Yes, sir.
get your list, and when you're done, or even before you're done, bombard them.
Yes, sir. I will.
Yeah, send it everywhere. And then if you know anything in 3 months, then call them back. Excuse me, Katira, did you get it?
Yeah.
Until they get sick of you and say, you know what? Let that chick in. Something like
Yes,
that.
sir.
Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Okay, way to go. Way to go. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. Is this Kayleen Newton? Kayleen Newton. Okay. And then last but not least, Tamar Roberts.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
All right, Tamar, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Me first.
Okay, my name is Tamar Roberts.
Sorry, Tamar.
Yes, Tamar Roberts. I am a banker. My profession is as a banker. I've been in banking for 18 years. Currently working in our sales department as a loan manager. I joined this class because I just like mostly everyone. I've been doing this for some time now. I kind of understand the ins and outs of financial planning. However, I don't have a certification, so I definitely want to be a part and continue to self-develop myself so that I can add more value to my clients' experience and our interaction on a daily basis.
Sounds good to me. So that means any little bits and pieces you pick up along the way, up to and including your certification, can only be of a huge benefit to you. And so, like I said to the others, keep on trucking and make sure you see it to the end.
Definitely.
Because
Yes.
in a couple of years, I'm going to be storming the National Insurance Board for all that money I paid them for my entire life. And I expect you guys to continue so they can have the money to pay.
Hey, you.
Well, all right, so I'm banking on you guys to continue to be successful. All right, good stuff. Okay, Tamar. Actually, Tamar is a Bible name. Did you know that, Tamar?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
David's daughter.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Beautiful name, Tamar.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, welcome aboard, everybody. My sessions typically are very open sessions as far as I'm concerned. I yap a little. I encourage folks to yap a little, raise questions, any life experiences, any issues that might be going on that you want to discuss without calling anybody's name, just to get some feedback. Whatever you say can only be helpful not only to yourself but to your colleagues as well. So feel free. You don't have to put your hands up. You don't have to wait until the end of the class, any of that stuff. While I'm talking, interrupt me. Excuse me, I have something to say. And then just say it or just start saying it. And then I'll stop so everybody can listen to what you say, because that's what I want you to do. All right. So feel free. Don't be bashful. I don't want to be the only one yapping. throughout the whole sessions, okay? All right. Let me just put up my contacts one more time for those persons who may have missed it. If you don't have that information yet, please make a note so you can reach me if you need to reach me. Just for the record, so that you have some idea, so that I don't come off as the pilot in the plane who's flying and you don't know who's flying the plane. Let me just give you a little feedback from whence I came. Like I said, I've been lecturing for over 30 years, believe it or not. And I've lectured at every financial institution, so at every institution in the Bahamas and some out of the Bahamas, for STEP, for NOVA, for U of M, all kinds of crazy stuff over the last 30 something years. Of course, UB, when it was not UB, when it was just the College of the Bahamas trying to get themselves together, okay? I have been, my career started as a customs officer for a couple of years, and then I went into banking as a loan manager at Bank of Nova Scotia for many years, and then after that, I worked as financial controller for a bank and the transportation industry and the hotel, and then after that, another 20-something years, I worked as an offshore banker in senior management and compliance and blah, 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 blah. I worked for a couple of regulators. Man, I can't believe I'm that old already. But anyway, that's kind of from whence I came. So when you guys talk about expanding your horizons, I get it completely. I took the risk to do that because there is some risk involved in expanding your horizons, and but do it anyway. There are a whole lot of rewards somewhere along the way as well. Okay? As far as banking and financial services and accounting and business and all those kinds of things, I don't believe there's anything I have not probably seen in my lifetime. So you are encouraged to continue to forge ahead, okay, for sure, by all means. All right, so let's get cracking. Before we start, again, remember, my sessions are open sessions. You can say whatever you want. Do whatever you want as long as it's legal. Let it rip in these sessions, okay? For sure. So before we get into our actual discussions on risk management, I would like to just mention to you that there are what we call 6 important risk management questions that every entity, no matter what type of entity it is, no matter where it is in the world, should ask themselves with regards to risk. We should ask ourselves as individuals, countries, financial institutions, government, whatever the case, church, homes, whatever the case might be. These questions are supposed to be the typical questions we're thinking about when we think about risk management. Now, before I get into these questions, I want to get some feedback from this group as to first of all, what do you think risk is? What is risk? What is risk? Anyone? Jump in and start saying anything. Don't be bashful, let it rip.
The probability of a certain outcome or particular outcome.
Yeah, the probability that something will happen, there'll be a certain outcome to something. All right, any other thoughts on risk? Anyone else has any perception or thoughts on what is risk?
I would say exposure to potential loss.
Yeah, definitely. Exposure to potential loss, by all means. Okay, no question about it. In fact, it's because of that potential loss that we have any discussion about risk in the first place. And it's amazing that with all the potential to suffer loss, how much and how many firms and entities and individuals and whomever do not take steps to mitigate important risks. They just stick heads in the sand hoping it won't happen. And it might not. And if it does not, that's not the problem. The problem is what happens if it happens. And that's why we have this whole session on risk, because all the other things that you've learned so far and will learn after these sessions, if you do not undergird them with proper risk management, they will not be very successful. You will suffer a lot of pain and suffering in whatever capacity if we don't find ways as entities, organizations, individuals, etc., to mitigate our risk. That's the whole point. Can we get rid of risk entirely? No, and hell no. But we can try to minimize it as much as possible. Okay. Is anybody in this room who is married presently? Like COVID did not cause to get divorced? I'm the only one in this room that's married?
No,
Yeah.
I'm married. I'm married.
Okay, just checking. So question then, is there any risk in being married or getting married? And that's a weird question, isn't it? But is there?
Yes, there's a risk.
There's always risk. There's risk in everything. That's the whole point. Some of the things that where risk abides, we don't want it to abide, but doesn't matter what we want. When we walk onto a plane, there's a risk that the plane can crash, but we have to go on the plane anyway to get where we need to go. Of course, the company that owns the plane are supposed to be engaging in what? Risk mitigating exercises so that our level of fear and concern will be minimum, or God forbid, non-existent when we walk in the plane. But it doesn't mean that because of that, that there's no risk. There's always some degree of risk in everything, practically. How well we minimize and mitigate will determine our level of comfort. That's the point. That's actually the foundation of this whole session and everything else you're doing, by the way. When my son Dante was a little boy in primary school, he hated comprehension. He hated spelling. He hated writing essays. He hated that stuff for some reason. And at some point he became so frustrated, he says, Dad, why is it I'm doing all of these subjects? When I grow up, I'm not going to need half of these things or more. So why do I have to do all of them? And of course, in my wisdom, I had to come up with something. I said, well, he said, suppose I die after I've done them all. I said, well, you're not doing them in case you die, son. If you die, then you don't have a problem. You're doing them in case you live. And eventually he figured that out after he grew up, okay? So now he's writing like he loved English, and he thinks he's so eloquent. And I'm thinking, do you remember when you hated this stuff, mister? He said, well, Dad, that's a long time ago. So the point I'm making is there's no getting around risk. There's only recognizing it, mitigating, and trying to keep it to a minimum so that we can keep our stress and our problems and our losses to a minimum. Okay? So we're going to be looking at all kinds of different types of risks, how to mitigate those risks, and how to bring some level of comfort to our organizations and ourselves and whomever might be facing any kinds of risk issues. Okay? So what are these 6 important questions? Well, wherever you work, and especially anybody who works in risk management in any organization, these questions ought to be on their wall for them to look at every single day. The board of directors should have it in the boardroom. Senior management should have it in the senior management room. And those persons who are tasked with risk management should have it somewhere so that they can refer to it at all times. So what are the 6 questions? Number 1, we should always be asking ourselves, what are we trying to achieve? In whatever capacity, what are we trying to achieve? That's the question. You guys are doing CIFP, what are you trying to achieve? Is there any risk involved in doing it? Yeah, there's a risk that you'll not pass it, or there's a risk that you will pass it and you have to fight with somebody to recognize that you have it and that they should reward you for it and all this kind of stuff. But then there's also reward. Okay? But we're not here to talk so much about rewards. They kind of take care of themselves. We're here to talk about risk. So number 1, what are we trying to achieve? That's the first question. The second question, what is there out there that could affect us? What is it potentially? What? Because if we don't, as an organization or otherwise, consider what might affect us, then we can fall prey. We can be lulled to sleep thinking that all will be well until all hell breaks loose. Does anybody notice that a lot of times, as long as you have a spare in the car, you don't get a flat, and oftentimes you don't get a flat until what? You don't have a spare for some strange reason. So what might affect us is question number 2. Number 3, what matters are most important to the organization that need to be considered from a risk perspective? What matters are most important? Not necessarily least. Not that least isn't important, but most. The things that can hurt you most if you don't mitigate the risk around that. That's question number 3. Question number 4.
Can you repeat that, please?
Number 3,
Hmm?
what matters are most important?
Okay.
What matters are most important? For you guys, we're talking about the organization. If it's an individual, we're talking about the individual. If it's a family, we're talking about the family, and so on. But again, this thing you guys are doing is perhaps more from an organizational level, but bear in mind that it can be from any entity perspective, individual, private, public, national, or international. Okay? The rules still apply. The risks are still there across the board. And the questions are definitely relevant to everything from a risk perspective. Okay?
Okay.
Number 4, once you determine what is most important in 3, number 4 is what should we do? Question 4, what should we do? And these are the burning questions that should be discussed at board level all the time, by the way, because the board is ultimately responsible for risk management anyway. The board of any organization, the head of any organization, their job is to be asking these questions all the time. Like, John, what the hell are we doing about risk around here? Have we considered these 6 questions lately? Or have we just been talking about politics and eating caviar? Which is what many of them do, by the way. They only deal with the most immediate issues and then move on and leave a lot of risk issues sitting on the table. Some organizations don't even consider some key risks that they should be thinking about at the board level, at the senior management level. Which is why those of you who work for financial institutions might be aware, or will become aware, that the Central Bank and Securities Commission and regulators around the world are currently battling with this issue of risk management within organizations and trying to make organizations, force them to look at their risks, their inherent risks, their obvious risks, and their residual risks, whatever the hell it is. They're trying to get them to look at it because many organizations did not give it a whole lot of attention in the past. So regulators in the Bahamas and around the world are peering at them when they go in to do inspections. They're wanting to know, what is your risk management policy in here? You have these 6 questions? Well, they don't ask them that, but it means this. Do you have a written policy? What is in the policy? Is it sufficient? Again, does your staff know what's going on? Do they know? Do you discuss it with them? Do they have access to the information? Do you have any idea what the risk issues are facing the firm they work for? This is what regulators want financial institutions and others to do. Okay. So number 4, what should we do? Then we have question 5. Did any of the actions we took work? Did any of the actions we took in 4 work? You know, you can say what we should do, and then we can seek to do some things. But the question is, did we get any results? That's number 5. Did any of the actions we took in 4 worked? And then finally, number 6. What has changed? Question number 6. What has changed? Hopefully, by the time you get to 6, the answer will not be nothing or we don't know. That's a big problem. If you get all the way to 6 in any environment, and the answer is nothing has changed, or we don't know, or we're not sure, or we're not in agreement yet, or anything like any weird stuff like that, that is not good. By the time you get to number 6, it is expected that something hopefully substantial has happened that can be documented and implemented, monitored. See? Now, normally, after those 6 questions, if I was smart, I'll just turn off my computer and tell you guys good night. That's the class for tonight. But it's not the end. Those questions are the beginning, so that you can toss them around no matter what capacity you are operating in, no matter what capacity your clients that you serve might be operating in. Because some of your clients, by the way, could present risk to you. For example, the client who is laundering money and who wants to pay you off to take a deposit or do some other similar thing, they are a risk to you. The same client that you serve every week, taking the deposits, giving them withdrawals and so on, processing loans, whatever the case might be, they could turn out to be a great risk to you as a banker, for example, or someone working in financial services. Your friend could turn out to be a risk issue for you. Family members, see? So this risk thing, folks, I can only say it is inherent, it's everywhere. And sometimes it calls upon individuals and organizations unexpectedly, especially when it comes to customers and clients and family and friends and associates and business partners and business persons and bishops and pastors and whatever it is that we do with whom. Don't presume that there's no risk involved because somebody's a bishop or a minister of the government or a senior manager in the organization or your best first cousin or your brother or sister even. How about that? Okay. Risk is everywhere. Those questions are designed to keep you thinking about them. And be sure as you go about with your CIFP stuff that you do not forget that in all the advice and the work and the feedback you give, consider the potential risks. Okay? Sometimes risks are sneaky. They don't show themselves so obviously sometimes. They just come up what appears to be suddenly. And then all hell breaks loose. He says, you know what? Mr. Wilkinson did say that back in 2022. Okay. All right. So let's get cracking then. You guys have your notes, right? Module 3.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that first slide with the truck leaning under that piece of, I don't know, wood. Is that a good idea, anyone?
No, that could break.
Why is it that the person under the truck didn't consider that? Or maybe they did, they just presumed, to hell with it, I have confidence that it won't break. Does that confidence make sense in that case?
Not at all.
No. Granted, it may not break that day. And every time it doesn't break, it gets closer to breaking. See, that's the problem as well. And so sooner or later, if he continues to take that kind of risk, that's clearly poor risk management. Clearly. And we do that every day, believe it or not, in one form or another. When I say we, I mean, not necessarily you guys, but many people around the world do all kinds of crazy stuff. I see people speeding around New Providence all the time, taking a risk that the next accident will not be them, that it will always be the other person.
Mhm.
See, that's the great problem with risk and managing it. Yeah, we always have this thing, well, it's not me, I know how to drive. It's the other person who's going to be mashed up. It's an incredible phenomenon. Okay, that's not a good way to manage risk. Like, it's the other person that's going, it's not me. Hell no. Sooner or later, I've seen people go to funerals where a person have died in car accidents and then speed away from the funeral. What sense does that make? None. But we continue to take these risks. Some of us survive now, and some of us don't, personally and organizationally. Okay? Anybody in this class ever heard about Enron?
No.
My. You guys are a bunch of youngsters. Okay? When you get a moment, Google Enron and just read a paragraph or two. Okay. Enron was a multi-billion-dollar.
I have, but it's
You have it? Somebody have it? Enron?
Is it ENRON?
Yes.
Okay.
You have it?
No, I don't have it. Someone else said they had it.
Okay, who has it? By the way, whether you know it or not, being a CIFP means you have to be prepared to yap.
Mhm.
True or false?
Yeah, true.
You do. You have to be prepared to yap, talk, chat, and all that crazy stuff. So, who found Enron?
I found Enron Scandal. That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Read some
Oh,
of that scandal.
pardon?
Read some of that scandal.
Well, an overview, it just says the Enron scandal involves Enron duping the regulators by resorting to off-the-books accounting practices and incorporating fake holding. The company utilized special purpose vehicles to hide its toxic assets and big amounts of debt from the investors and creditors.
Yes. Does everybody spot the risk there already? Anyone?
The conclusion says the shareholders lost 74 billion.
Excuse me. How much?
74
Flicking billion.
Wow. In the
Okay.
4 years.
Yes. Welcome to the results of poor risk management, which includes fraudulent, embezzlement, thieving, and the whole 9 yards. All that is part of risk management, by the way, in case you didn't know. Thieving is part of risk management. Fraud is part of risk management. Embezzlement, cooking the books and accounting, fixing numbers to suit, all of that is risk. Poorly managed, clearly. Anything else? 74 billion. Anything else after billion?
Yeah.
Keep going.
It says the shareholders lost 74 billion in the 4 years leading up to Enron's bankruptcy. From 2004 to 2011, the company paid its creditors more than $21.7 billion. The day after Enron filed for bankruptcy, it fired 5,000 workers, which were approximately 25% of its total strength of 21,000 employees.
On my mind. Wow. Okay. Students, welcome to the world of risk. Okay. Some risks are out of your control, and some risks management, people, and others create them on their very own. Okay. Not only did Enron go down in smoke, never to return, but all those employees who had their life savings, they worked at Enron for 20, 30, 40 years in some cases. They lost it all. ALL. And since Enron was so big, nobody ever thought, and they've been around for so many decades, that that could ever even be possible. See? That's how risk works. It will fool you right to the very end if you're not watching it. And some of them are watching it, they're just creating it too. That's the other problem. Because see, if you're watching it and somebody's creating it more than what you're watching, you still have a problem. You have to find the people who are creating it as well and get rid of them. The only problem is a lot of times they're the ones who are at the top. And that's the worst place to have evildoers.
Crooks.
True or false?
True.
The worst place in life to have evildoers are people at the top. They are always the culprits from the beginning of time. And then when a teller takes $20 because a child needs lunch and they say she's a TIFA, that's true. She shouldn't have taken it, or something out of petty cash or whatever. But nothing compared to white collar crime at the top.
Yes.
At the organ, I don't care where it is in the world, the top of the politics, the top of financial institution, the top of church, the top of every flicking thing is where all the real heavy, my. Okay, so yeah, that's Enron. In case for you guys who've never heard about Enron, there you go. On top of that, some of the persons who worked at Enron were so devastated, they had multiple suicides. People killed themselves.
Oh, wow.
They could not believe that they had lost their life savings. Talk about risk. Welcome to the real world. This truck with the stick is a joke, isn't it?
Well, not really, because he could have lost his life.
Well, he eventually will at this rate, wouldn't he? If he keeps up at this point, he's soon going to be crushed under that. And it's fascinating that that doesn't seem to have crossed his mind yet. That's what is it. See, that's the other thing about risk. Like some of us manage risk this way, and some of us manage risk that way. And this guy's managing risk the other way, apparently, because that's total madness.
I'm trying to understand how did that ladder hold up the truck's weight?
Well, something is going under there, apparently, but we don't know how long it's going to last, right?
Yeah.
Let us not forget that plane that just went down in China the other day, right? They still don't know how the hell the plane jackknifed.
Jeez.
Flying smoothly and then suddenly straight down and crashed into the mountains. So
they have an idea though.
The Chinese always have an idea. They don't say it.
Exactly.
I keep telling people Chinese are sneaky. Nothing personal, that's just a fact. Like for example, rats like cheese, right? So if I say rats like cheese, I'm not saying anything wrong about rats, am I?
No.
No, so Chinese are sneaky, they're just sneaky. And they've always been. They always listen to everybody, but you never know what they're doing.
They're discreet and private.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, now that's what I call politically correct. They would love to hear that. In fact, I think in Mandarin, that's probably what they say. We are not sneaky. Chinese are not sneaky. We are simply more discreet than Americans.
Yes.
Make no mistake though. I've heard a lot of people bad mouthing Uncle Sam in recent years. But I'll tell you, as much promise as Uncle Sam may have, I will take my chances with Uncle Sam any day before I land in a place like China, Russia, India, Africa, and the Middle East. I'll take my chance with Uncle Sam. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, see, we're talking risk, aren't we?
Yeah.
So anybody in this room could go wherever they want, any one of those places, feel free. But when you get to me, say, Mr. Wilkinson, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm staying over here.
Why India though?
Well, Indians are still killing their women if they talk to another guy in public.
Bahamians too.
Well, yeah, but you know, not
I'm just pulling your leg.
not on a large scale. Indian brothers are still talking, killing their sisters, and their sisters want to marry the wrong person that they didn't choose. Yeah, they're still doing that crap. And if you know anything about the Indian culture, see, don't let the surface fool you. There's great risk in looking at the surface.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people, organizations, and people are in trouble now because we keep looking at the surface.
Yeah.
Oh, those Chinese look like they're so kind and quiet. Yeah, of course, many of them are. However, Ravi looks like he's so structured. You know, doing everything around there, and Ravi, the Indian. But let me tell you a secret about risk. My grandmother told me when I was a little boy, she said, if you want Noma, anybody ever heard that? Come what? No? You guys are that young?
Live with Ma.
Oh, live with Ma. Yes, thank you very much. Whoever said that, thank you. You want Noma? Come live with Ma. You don't know no one until you live with Ma. How about that? You only think you know until then. So there's risk. See, every single thing you said so far is risk related. That's what is so fascinating. And we just passed the truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
See? All that crap already, and we just passed the truck. I'm still looking at the picture. I don't know about you guys, man. This truck is soon gonna fall on him. Okay, somebody needs to get us, get him together and get him out of that truck thing. I don't know. But then that's the other thing. Some people, you could be talking to them about their risk, and what do they tell you? Leave me alone.
Yep.
Isn't that true?
Yep.
Even in organizations, you tell your boss or the senior management or something like, I don't think that's good either. Like, and who are you? You're just a lowly middle management, low level clerical, whatever they call you. Without even stopping to think that maybe there is merit in what that person has said.
Yeah.
So there's risk in not taking good advice even because of our what? Arrogance or pride or some other egg.
Yeah.
Wow. Risk is spooky. All right. So having said all that, we're not done. We're still at the beginning. So let's go to slide number 2. Let's leave that guy in that truck. Hopefully by the time we're done this evening, it would not have collapsed today.
So.
Okay, hopefully. But we know that that's not a good idea. But what is interesting is people oftentimes do know what the risks are, and they still what?
They still proceed. They still do
Isn't
it.
that interesting? Yes. Man, when my son was going to college, the first thing I said to him was, you should wait until you get married before you think of. But if you can't, for God's sake, don't take anybody's word for it. Take the necessary precautions and protect yourself. Oh, Dad, I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm old fashioned, but I don't give a flying fish. Do it or else. There are consequences. If you take the risk, there are consequences. Well, I haven't heard anything yet. I'm hoping he's not taking the risk. But yes, we tell people and they still don't listen. They still go ahead and take the risk. Firms, individual, otherwise. It's crazy as hell. All right. So our next slide talks about risk management. So we've seen some of the risks. That's not all of them. More is coming. Okay? But we open our discussion about how quickly risk management is beginning to develop. Interestingly enough, folks are just calling it a discipline. As long as risk has been around, it's now being formally discussed as a rapidly developing discipline. How about that? For which there are many views and opinions, as long as risk has been around. Fascinating. Okay? Questions like, what does risk management involve? How should it be conducted? How should we manage it? What is its purpose? What is the whole idea of risk management? Well, obviously to manage risk. The big question is, well, how do we go about that? What standards should we set in order to manage risk? Well, for one thing, in the firm, there should be some standards so that everybody understands basically where the firm stands on risk issues. For example, if you're using risk language, the language should be standard. Everybody should know what the language means. Not one area it means this and the other it means that. That's a cause for confusion. That risk mitigation management program is not going to work well if everybody's not on the same page. One of the reasons why organizations have so many issues sometimes and otherwise is that not everybody's on the same page. People have their own things going on depending on where they're located, what they're doing, and who their connections are. That in itself creates even further risk for many organizations. A lot of the times organizations are so big that we don't realize all of the blah, blah, blah that's going on inside, but it creates a lot of problems. Fortunately, they don't all go down in smoke like Enron, but many of them do eventually, depending on the level and intensity and type of risk they continue to take. Many firms go down all the time that we don't hear anything about. Smaller firms, medium-sized firms, they go under. And if you check the history, you'll find that their risk management policies and procedures failed or they were non-existent. When I was a compliance officer back in the day, I often ran into senior management people, especially from offshore banks. Because believe it or not, I worked for a Canadian offshore bank, French Canadian offshore bank, French Canadian, parlez-vous français, Canadian bank. I worked for a Brazilian offshore bank. I worked for a Filipino offshore bank. One or two other offshore banks in my time. First as a senior compliance manager, blah, 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 and then senior management, blah, blah, blah. So you get to see all kinds of different perspectives. And when I was a compliance officer, I often ran into senior management and board people who always wanted you to do stuff that you weren't supposed to do that were incongruent with the requirements of the regulators. And when I would say, I hear you, but as the compliance officer, I cannot conform to that because these are the rules that we have to abide by. And those guys had the audacity to say to me, does the central bank pay your salary, Mr. Wilkinson, or do we? Imagine that.
Wow.
Some of them ask you outright if they're really bold and stinky, and others of them are a little more subtle. You have to be able to know what they're asking you. But at the end of the day, the question is the same. And in those days, they knew I had little children and all that. So they try to intimidate you like, you don't need this job? Are you going to pay school fees, pay for your children? Whatever it is they try to imply to force you to do what they want, notwithstanding the risk. See? The problem they had was I was from the old school. And so therefore, I came structured. So I couldn't be easily unstructured. And they didn't particularly like that. And I got a lot of blah, blah, blah as a result, but that's okay. Because one of the things my grandparents taught me a long time ago was that at the end of the day, your name is all you have what? Left. How about that? And then what happens? God gives me two sons with the same name. So suppose I had taken the risk. See, risk again. And something went down. They'd be saying up to this very day, yes, that's Mr. Wilkinson who. And over there are his two sons, and it's very likely they are too, even though they had nothing to do with it. Risk is a very interesting thing, students. Okay? It has very tiny origins and it can grow into monsters, bigger than you could ever. If you don't believe me, go back to Enron and have a look. 74, how much? Billion. It's my foot. All right. So if you're in the firm, everybody has to be on the same page, same language. However, risk management is carried out, everybody needs to know communication. The organization must be structured to manage risk, and management must be on top of its game. They have to lead the charge. Those things are not happening. Risk management is going to be incongruent. And no matter how ambitious we might be about averting risk, we're going to get stuck somewhere. And organizations get stuck all the time. That's why we have so many problems, depending on where we are. Okay? Wow. So, is risk management just for companies and government? No. It's for anybody. It's for the short term, it's for the long term, it's supposed to be forever. Don't forget, risk management, don't complicate it. It's simply managing risks. And we're going to look at all kinds of different risks and some ways to manage them. But information enough, students, you'll find, is not going to mitigate risk issues. Information is important for the first step in managing risk. But your determination to make it work is a whole different ballgame. And the environment in which you try to make it work is a whole other ballgame. So welcome to the world of risk, in case you never even thought about it that way before. Think about it that way. Okay? All right, so how can we define risk? Somebody said it's a potential loss. Somebody said some other correct definitions of risks, and there are many other kinds of definitions of risks. Okay? It is often defined as a combination of probability and consequences. It is often defined as being both positive and negative, depending on which perspective you look at the risk. And even in the field of safety, when risk comes up, it comes up under the caption of prevention and mitigation from harm. So this risk thing is very dynamic all of a sudden. All kinds of different faces. And how well we recognize those faces, how well we know how they work, how well we know to what they apply, will determine how well you manage your risk, whatever it is. Since Katura is from a non-financial institution, Katura, are you still there? Katura, are you still there? Apparently not. I had a very particular question for Katura. I'll have to come back to that in a little bit. All right. So then let's look at the process of risk management. We now know what some of the risks are out there. We now know kinds of problems to some extent. We now know that there are more risk issues to come. We now know that risk management is all about trying to manage our risk. So let's look at the process. Now, if you look at this particular slide under risk management, there are a couple of key things that are mentioned that really deserves to be given consideration. All of us. And remember, no matter where we are in our organization, in our lives, in our day-to-day, We're all subject to risk issues every single day, whether you're aware of it or not, whether you like it or not. So this risk management thing process is something to think about, okay? For your job, life, and a whole host of other things. Okay? For your clients, let's not forget about that. Who you advise, see? Whom you advise as CIFPs. Let's not forget that. Okay? Especially if you're advising them for a fee. If you're advising for a fee, you're acting like a professional, like the certified person that you will be. And therefore, you have a responsibility to make sure that you give them the proper information. How about that? Okay. So, what is this management thing in risk? First of all, there's a little laundry list. Let's look at it. It is described as a process whereby organizations what? Methodically address their risks. Maybe I should put in there should address. Because many organizations don't seem as if they're aware of this at all, that the addressing of risk should be methodical. Because many organizations still deal with risk in a very helter-skelter way. Not a good idea. There's some discussion about good risk management. Good risk management is any risk that you identify and you treat. Good risk management is any risk that you identify and you treat. Risk management should not be on holidays and vacation and St. Patrick's Day only. It should be continuous, developing ongoingly throughout the entire organization and its strategy on an ongoing basis. And when necessary, implement it across the board, not in some places. Some people know and other people don't know. Some people are aware and others are not aware. Okay? It should be methodical. It should wrap its arms around the organization. The board should be talking about it on a regular basis so that the rest of the organization is well aware that the board takes it seriously. And typically when a board takes a matter seriously, persons down the line tend to take it seriously. Risk management and mitigation should be part of the company's culture. It should be written down in a policy, and it should be supported first and foremost by its board and its senior management, and then communicated down. It's no wonder a lot of organizations don't seem to be heavy into this risk management thing. They say they are, hopefully they are. But it's easy to see because risk management puts a lot of demands on your time and your energy and your determination to mitigate and fight risk and minimize risk. Okay. Interestingly enough, risk is not as difficult as a lot of people think. It's just that a lot of times we don't want to sit down and mess with it. We just want to wing it in organizations or in general. But if we just sit down and methodically and structurally do it, communicate it, tell everybody about it, then after a while it becomes part of the culture. And once it becomes part of the culture, then it becomes fairly easy to keep risk to a minimum. Why do I say minimum? Because we never get rid of all the risk. And risks are sometimes like fires. As soon as you put one out, another one raises its ugly head somewhere, which is why we have to be constantly monitoring so that we can ensure that the existing mitigating processes are in place, and if any new ones come, we'll be alerted sooner rather than later. Okay. All right. I wonder if Kateria is there. Kateria, are you back? I have a question for you. Nothing yet. Let's see. Shanika.
Yes,
Okay, there you are. Just checking. I'm just calling names randomly to see who's having coffee and who's not. How's that?
Okay.
Uh, there's even risk in trying to maintain like a certain level of consciousness at the end of the day, listen to all this crazy risk stuff without saying, you know what, I'm just so flicking tired, I'm gonna just, All right, anybody saying Shakira? Katura? The reason why I'm asking for her is because she does not work in a financial institution. And I am curious as to what her perception of risk might be in the field that she works in, if there's any perception of it at all. Let me ask the class in general. She works for Atlantis and as a coupier. Any risk in that? Anyone? Let's somebody pinch it for Katura. Any risk in being a coupier?
I would say so, yes.
What would you say, Pierre?
I would say we could possibly have another pandemic number 2, where she may be considered out of work for a while. That may be a potential risk there for her.
You know, that's interesting because you're absolutely right. And it's one of those risks that other persons may not have actually thought about. They may have thought about some other kind of risk connected to work, not necessarily risk that could put her what? Out of work. See my point? And so that's a very interesting perspective, which is why risk management needs to be what? A joint effort so that you can get what? Different perspectives from different persons from different areas of the organization, for example. Because what one person might not think about, a Pierre or Suzette might well think about it. Okay? And that's the beauty of brainstorming, getting other people involved, even asking the opinions of persons down the line in the organization. What are some of the risks you think we have in our organization? Senior management would be surprised to find that their staff have some very interesting perspectives that, in fact, could be very helpful to the firm. If only they would ask, if only they would listen, and if only they would implement the ones that are good. But the fact that they don't ask, listen, or implement the ones that are good is another risk issue. See my point? Fascinating, this risk thing. Just when you think you've seen the last of it, it comes up in another form. So yes, there could be, like in Shanghai, they're locked down in Shanghai, they say again, because there's a new strain. In other parts of Europe, etc., as we they're telling us to take off our mask over here, they're shutting down a certain place over there still. So yeah, suppose there's another outbreak. Then the casino closes again. Then she's out of work. Okay? That's how risk works. And sometimes it doesn't work from the angle that you think. That's why it's so important to be considering all the possibilities and even getting feedback from other people. It might surprise certain firms if only they would ask. Okay? All right. So then let's then look at some of the internal and external risk factors that you guys might encounter from day to day in your jobs. And maybe in discussions with clients, if you do client services and so on. Okay? Start with the external ones. As you can see, the external risks are many. Okay? We have financial risks. We have strategic risks. We have organizational risks. And we have hazard risks. And that's just the external ones. And this list is not exhaustive, it's just the key ones. So those of you who work in financial institutions and other organizations and who might work elsewhere where these kinds of risks apply to you, again, these may not be things that you see in your normal day-to-day work, but certainly they exist. And certainly there are persons who are in the organization who should be considering these issues. and looking into the risks related to them. So let's look at the financial risk, for example, interest rates. Do we have any interest rate risk issues in the Bahamas, anyone? Currently or potentially? Bankers? Any interest rate risks in the Bahamas? What do we mean by interest rate risk? Make a guess. What do we mean when we say we have interest rate risks? Well,
I'm not in the financial sector, but I would think if the potential for the interest rate on your loan or whatever to change.
absolutely. For somebody who's not in financial services, Shanika, that is excellent. Okay, that is a major concern in the Bahamas and elsewhere, that the lending rate, for example, the prime rate in the Bahamas could change. And therefore, those persons who have variable rate mortgages, their interest rate will go up. And when the interest rates go up, so will their loan payments. In fact, when they had the housing crisis in the United States back in 2008, that was one of the problems they had. Because of variable interest rates, the market rates went up, mortgage payments increased. A lot of people discovered that they could no longer afford their mortgages, and there was nothing they could do about it. So many thousands of Americans lost their homes, and hundreds more just walked out and abandoned the building because they could no longer afford the mortgage payments as a result of the increase in interest. Okay? Increase in interest rates makes everything more expensive, just like the increase in the gas prices. As we can see, we went from 4 something to 6 something overnight. So as small as New Providence is, we're complaining. Grand Bahama, that has the largest space, they're complaining even more because they have to drive further to go wherever they want to go, which means they have to use more gasoline. At least in Nassau, we could fetch from one point to the next, but not places like Grand Bahama and other bigger islands. They have a problem. I wouldn't talk about bigger countries. That's why they're crying at the moment. Okay? Interest rate risks. It's a serious thing. So on the one hand, they can go up and make our lives miserable because our cost of borrowing goes up. And then on the other hand, we have this phenomena in many of the banks in the Bahamas where if you open up a savings account or CD, some banks don't even pay you 1%. Is that true, anyone? Or am I making that up?
Very true.
So that's another, that's another risk on the other side, on the investment side. So we have risk of interest rates going up on the borrowing side. Then we have risk of no interest being paid or very little on the investment side. How ironic is that? So depending on what side of the fence you are, you could be hit from both angles. If you have a mortgage or a loan, and rates go up, dog eat your lunch. And if you have a CD or savings account and they're hardly paying anything on in interest, dog eat your lunch again. And who's allowing all this dog eating lunches to go on? Wow. Whether we get through all these slides in the next 3 weeks or not, by the time we're done, you should have enough wherever we are to tickle your fancy and get you to thinking about how serious this risk management issue really is. Not only to your firm where you work, but to you as an individual are impacted as well. The country is impacted as well. There was a discussion the other day about our sovereign debt. Anybody ever heard about that? Our debt service ratio. Anybody ever heard about that? Does anybody know what our estimated debt is in the Bahamas now for countrywide?
No. What is it?
Okay, anybody has the phone? Google it. Google, what is the current Bahamian dollar debt? Let's see what
We're in
comes
the
up.
billions, aren't we?
Well, Google it, let's see, let's not guess. Anyone, grab your phone and type it in. It's okay, we can wait. This is a serious thing.
This
There's
said
a-
around 8.49 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
Kiss my foot. 8.49 billion. Where the hell did we get to borrow 8.49 billion? And for what?
Ah,
And where did it go?
Yeah, where did it go? Because you guys are gonna have to pay it back, correct?
Correct.
Correct? And your children. And maybe your children's children. Welcome to risk.
is it safe to say that it's only going to increase over the years? I
It
don't.
is safe,
see
it is
going
safe
down.
to say that, yes. Unfortunately. And therein lies the other risk. The risk that we're not going to be able to pay it down unless we strike oil. And we see that that's not likely, correct?
You mean for the Bahamians, eh?
Yeah, for Bahamians. Our host was dashed the other day when they went down, nothing happened. Okay, so yes. Now, don't get me wrong. With great fiscal responsibility and some pain and suffering, we could put a big dent. We could put not a big dent. We could put a significant dent into it in a couple of years, 5 to 10 years. But who's prepared to make that sacrifice? Are Bahamians prepared to do it? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because we are a strange group of people, are we not? We
I
want
don't
it.
think the politicians would make that sacrifice because they want to get in the next term.
Of course, which is the other problem where risk comes in. Things are not going to improve because the politicians and their voting machinery will not allow it to improve because they're going to do whatever they have to do in order to maintain the status quo. And if that means borrowing more, faking it more, increasing the debt for future, because remember, they're not interested in the future, politicians, are they? Not only in the Bahamas, period, everywhere. They're not really interested in the future. They're only interested in what now. As far as they're concerned, the future is somebody else's problem. Because sooner or later they're going to drop dead anyway and leave it, leave the problem they created. Welcome to risk. And all of that came out of the first one, interest rates. Okay, folks? We have a long list of external risks, and that's not internal yet. Wow, it's interesting when you really stop to mess with it. Then we have foreign exchange rates risk. In the Bahamas, currency is pegged to the US currency, and we're fighting like the devil to keep it that way because if we don't, dog eat our lunch. Does anybody have a phone?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you didn't think your phone would feature so prominently. Go into Google again and find out, type in how many Jamaican dollars equal to $1 US. Just type it in. How many Jamaican dollars equal to $1 US?
.0065.
So if, well, not point anything. Try it again. $1 US is equal to how many Jamaican dollars? Anybody else came up with anything interesting?
153.
153, that's all?
Yeah,
Are you sure?
yeah. 153.43.
Jamaican dollars equals $1 US.
Mm-hmm.
My.
I'm getting 65 cents. I don't know.
Probably
I think that's if it's one Jamaican dollar to,
be
Yeah.
65 cents.
but it's not 60. I think I have 0.0065.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it wouldn't be less than $1 period. That's around like the Canadian rate, which is 0.77 or thereabouts. Nothing like that. It's something like several thousand Jamaican dollars to $1 US, or several hundred. Did you know that?
Yeah, I knew it was a lot Jamaican dollars to make a US dollar.
Anybody knows why? Foreign exchange issues. Okay. In other words, there's a minimum of several hundred Jamaican dollars for $1 US. Let's call it 600. It's more than that. So if 600 Jamaican dollars equal to $1 US, how many Jamaican dollars do you need in order to purchase $5 US, anyone? That'd be 6 times 5, right? Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you need 33,000 Jamaican dollars to purchase $5 US. That's why it's so expensive for somebody living in Jamaica to leave the country. They have to save all kinds of thousands of Jamaican dollars just to buy a plane ticket. Did you know that? Probably not. Funny, a lot of Bahamians don't seem to be aware, and those of us who are aware, well, whatever. But that's the foreign exchange side of things. That's why the Bahamas continues to fight to keep its dollar pegged to the US. Because if we don't, and if we have to compete on the foreign exchange market with very little resources to export other than tourism, we're going to end up in big trouble. And it's going to become very expensive for us to be able to do anything externally, just like Jamaica and other West Indian countries and other countries. We just don't feel it because we still peg to the US dollar 1-for-1. Something which we continue to take for granted. And I wonder if we ever stop to consider the risks involved with that coming to an end. I'm sure we have, which explains why we keep fighting to maintain it. Okay? All right, just some food for thought on the financial external risks. Then there's credit. Credit risk is simply, for Pierre, that loan that you give Pierre will not be paid back. Is that possible, Pierre?
Yes, it is.
Yes, that is called credit risk. But that customer who smiled, shook your hand, took your check, and swore that they'd repay that loan, just as you told them it should be paid. Most customers do, but not all. And there's always the risk that money loaned out will not come back. And there's a certain percentage of it that does not come back. Okay? That's why we refer to it as financial risk. Okay? Then we have some other kinds of risks like strategic. For example, what is the competition doing? Are they doing some things to get us out of the market? Are they doing some things to cut into our profit margins? Are they stealing away our customer base? Like is Alive stealing customers from Batelco? Anyone?
No, but Telco is giving their customers to Alive.
Or they're just okay. I like that. I love it. I would have never thought about that. Yeah, more. Yeah, they're giving them away. I agree. It's like they made a deal with the devil to just give them away. Don't you get that feeling?
I do.
They're not doing like anything really to struggle to keep clients. They still have. Does anybody else agree with me? Like that their strategic risk thing in that area sucks right now.
I have a fight with them every month.
Welcome to the group. You're not the only one. And they have this attitude like, so you don't like it, leave the mall.
Mm-hmm.
If you're tired waiting, get out.
Yep.
Carry your doggone customer self somewhere else. We'll get you when we feel like it. We'll talk to you how we feel like it. We don't need to smile in here. Who the hell are you? Customer.
That's
You
them.
get the feeling, or that's just me?
No, I share the same sentiments.
Yeah, when the hell did we become that kind of employee? And why? One thing is certain, that is a strategic risk because they've given away lost and continue to lose customers. And for some reason, they haven't gotten down to the front line yet to communicate to them that if we get any complaints about, we're firing you and
Yes.
bringing somebody who wants to work
Mhm.
because they're too flicking comfortable. How's that? Like another regular government department. Sorry, I just said it so you could remember. But it's true, unfortunately. But that's part of what we call strategic risk. What our competition is doing and what we're doing about what our competition is doing. And are we able to keep up with our competition? And are we looking to stay ahead of our competition? Or are we giving our customers to the competition? Those are what we call strategic risks. And I keep wondering, what conversations do they have at the board level at Patelco? And do they not know what's going down at the bottom of the organization, which is their front line? We have other risks. Can't get stuck on Patelco. But that's not only Patelco. Many other organizations are like that. My. All right. Other strategic risks, customers, see, change in customer base. That's strategic. And when customers leave, they don't tell you most of the time. And you don't start seeing it until you see a drop in your revenues month over month, year over year. Then you start realizing that you have a major strategic risk that you did not try to mitigate, that you took for granted, that you didn't train your customers to treat their customers like king, your staff to treat the customers like king so they can stay. And then suddenly start losing now. Losing money, losing business, losing your hat if you're not careful. Okay? Changes in industry. When equipment change, do we change? When staff skills change, do we change? When the competition smiles, do we smile more broader? When they offer services that are unique, do we offer similar or more? See? And what about customer demand? Are we watching that? Are we looking to see if customers keep coming back for our stuff? Or they only come back sporadically or not at all? Are we watching this? Is it important to us? What measures do we have in place to check it? Or we just take it for granted that they'll come sooner or later because they have no choice or some crazy thing. Well, customers have a lot of choices these days. So any organization that's not thinking strategically around customer demand levels are going to run into trouble. And every day they do. That's why many of them close their doors. We never hear anything about them here and worldwide. Interestingly enough, because we don't manage these strategic risks well. Some companies don't even think that they need to consider them, and some don't even know what they mean. Like strategic risk, what do you mean by that? But many of the larger firms like financial institutions and merchandising companies, etc., they should know. And many of them do it pretty well, but others don't. And many others fall by the wayside. We don't even hear about them. And that's only the Bahamas. Imagine the rest of the world, same problems. Okay? What are the kinds of operational risks companies face? Recruitment, especially post-COVID. I don't know what post. I don't know if it's safe to say post yet. That's the other thing. Might be risky to say post-COVID because post means after. And from all indications, it's not over, even though people are trying to give you the suggestion, which is another risk. Question, costs. The operational risk recruitment, why could that be a risk issue at all? Like recruitment, how's that a risk? How is hiring people a risk?
You don't hire the right people.
Which we oftentimes do. We hire the wrong people, don't we?
Yep.
Oftentimes we do. And the people who we should have hired, we don't. Because we use the wrong criteria. And then we end up with a whole bunch and get stuck with a whole bunch of stinky folk, so to speak. All we
And
hire. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like in the case of whoever organizations where they are poor customer service, they're the ones on the front those customers dealt with. Maybe
Indeed.
they may be more well suited in the back office instead of
Or-
interfacing with
yes,
customers.
absolutely. Either in the back, in the filing section, or out home watching Netflix. How's that? But certainly not facing customers. Absolutely. Okay. Then if you hire the wrong type of employee, some persons are only there because they are using your organization as a stepping stone. Trying to figure out who wants to stay and who wants to just step over is a whole other issue. Because remember, recruitment is a very expensive exercise, and so is turnover, correct?
Yep.
And I keep telling management people, like I told them decades ago, when you have good people, do not try and treat them like dirt. How's that? Because really good employees are not easy to find. True or false?
True.
And it's still true.
True.
Okay. But some organizations, we have this still have this arrogant attitude that if you don't like it, get the hell out. You'll find somebody. Somebody wants a job. Anybody wants a job. But who
They
are
want to
they?
work.
Yeah, and what quality of work will they give you? These are the kinds of organizational risks that organizations face every day, believe it or not. Okay. Supply chain risk, which they say we have now because of the war, because of the pandemic. There's a short supply, cut off. People are playing political games with their products. They have it. They're just creating supply chain issues because they want to make other companies miserable, play politics, get some kind of whatever the hell they're doing. It presents an operational risk for those of us who are in that line of business. Regulators have new laws and regulations that create more cost, more processes, more programs, more stress, and so on, more operational risks that you may not meet the requirements, and therefore you get fined, your license threatened, your life on jeopardy, and you're going to because you're not meeting these regulatory requirements. These are real issues. Culture and board composition, man. Let me ask you guys, how do you think board composition could be an operational risk? Where's the risk in board composition? Where's the risk there? If any. What do we mean by board composition anyway?
I think a risk can be if it's not diverse.
Indeed. 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 If it's not diverse enough. And when we say diverse, we don't necessarily mean the new version of diverse. We mean just the old-fashioned diverse. It has different people, see? Different people. Notice I didn't say anything else. Different people on the board with different experiences and different backgrounds who can add to the overall decision-making process. See?
Yes.
Absolutely. If the board is of one mind and the mind is in the wrong place and everybody can be persuaded by somebody, that board is a problem. If the board is making decisions that are just in their own self-interest and not for the shareholders and the organization as a whole, that composition is a problem. And shareholders are now at the point where they're getting pissed off with their own boards. Some shareholders are now calling shareholder meetings regularly and firing entire boards because boards are busy running their own self-interest programs because the composition of the board is wrong. In the Bahamas, financial institutions, particularly in offshore financial institutions, are being asked to hire INEDs, independent directors, because they are not satisfied that the sitting directors are being objective enough when they make decisions about how the organization should be run. And so they say, but we require you to bring in an independent person. So at least there's one bloody person who can object to some nonsense, as opposed to everybody being in one accord, even though the accord is going the wrong way.
Do our board members paid? Do they receive any compensation?
Of course, that's part of the problem. Because if the board wants to make a decision that is against a regulatory requirement or against something moral or against something ethical and all that stuff, And anybody who tries to disagree sometimes on the board, they will threaten them directly or indirectly. John, Mary, if you're not going to go with us, then I'm afraid we cannot have you return to the board. And since they are interested in the money and some other perks that board members get, then instead of making the right decision, they just go with the
Oh,
low. Yes. Board composition. My.
Hmm.
Wow. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Most non-board people have no idea how complex, confusing, and downright unethical and immoral many boards are. Worldwide, company-wide, church-wide, Vatican-wide. See? What can I say? This is a risk management class, isn't it?
it is.
Okay, sorry. These are all risk issues. And these are not TV issues. These are real. Some of them play on TV, versions of it, but these things we're talking about are real. They exist as we speak. Okay. Some board composition is meeting secretly somewhere now to do some nonsense as we speak and try and hide it from the independent director or tell them you could join us. If you don't join us, we're gonna find another independent director who will join us. We do all kinds of weird stuff. That's why there's so much risk involved. Who's going to be firm enough to say, I'm standing up for what's right? Well, John, you can stand up for what's right, but that 10,000 you get every 3 months, we'll just take that, bring somebody who will agree with us. The door is over there, John.
Wow.
Oh, no, I was just joking. I changed my mind. Hang on, stay. I'll go with it. Could it be possible that those things happen? It is no doubt possible. They do indeed happen. Right? And then, of course, we have hazard risks like contracts. People break contracts. We sign contracts all the time. I swear I'll abide by the contract. God knows it. And people still break contracts. And you have to sue them and cause a lot of pain and suffering. Natural events, hazard risk, hurricane, storm, earthquakes. These are real issues. We've seen them. Dorian. Some Bahamians look like they forgot about Dorian, though. Could it be? I hope not. I hope not.
Not the ones who experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, not the ones who experience it. Only those of us who have not felt it. Only those who feel it know it. Sure. All right. And then, of course, we have two other kinds of external risks. We call them systems and environmental. Well, we know what the world is talking about environmental, getting green, go green, get rid of oil and all that kind of stuff, oil and this crazy thing. Nobody's suggesting that we shouldn't be environmentally conscious, but like everything else, we shouldn't play political games with it. We need to be practical, we need to be honest, and we need to do it right. And if we do it right, then we can have both. But we're just not doing it right. Everybody has their own little agenda about why they're doing it, okay? Environmentally or systemically. My. So Mary and I decided we wanted this way, and Franklin and Tom decided they wanted that way. And since I'm Russian, I want it this way, and you are Bahamian, then you can have it any way you want over there. And so it gets really messy everywhere, like everything else. Everybody has their own agenda. And in that, we have a whole ton of other risks. Just in that context alone, everybody's own agenda, see? Everybody's own agenda creates risk. Unforetold risk. Unforeseen. My foot. All right, so those are the key external risks that we can all run into depending on where we are. We're from countrywide, globally, individually, corporate, whatever, church, social, charity, doesn't matter. Depending on where we are, there's some aspect of it somewhere. Okay. Then we have the internal risk. Now, who would think with all that external risk, like, shouldn't we be done? Like more? Yeah, more. See that long list? And that's not even exhaustive. That's just like the key ones. The key internal risk that could exist for anybody who's not checking. Liquidity. If you don't check for liquidity, you're gonna have cash flow problems. You don't believe it? Mismanage your salary each month and see what happens. Anybody knows anything about that? Mismanage your salary and see what happens. It affects your liquidity, which affects your cash flow, and then you have to borrow money. Worry, we say in the Bahamas, to cover. Okay? Because we don't manage that aspect of our internal risk. Organizations have the same problem. Research and development, if you don't do it, then you can't remain competitive. You can't upgrade your product. You have to protect your intellectual capital, make sure people don't run off with it. You have to have accounting controls in place, otherwise people will rob you blind. These are all risk issues that have to be considered individually by organizations, or else information systems, ECP programs, saving data, protecting your system from hackers, etc. These are all real issues. We know about all the hacking situations recently, haven't we? Don't you guys know? How vulnerable computer systems are with all your personal information on it. All the organization's information on its customers and otherwise.
Yeah.
They're trying to hack in now the places around the world where they can cut off the entire electricity of an entire country. How about that?
That's what I think happened with that plane.
Very possible. Okay? We cannot rule it out. Because anything that's being controlled by a computer could be hacked, manipulated, and messed up and messed with. See? That's the problem. You know, with progress comes what? Other problems. Because remember, in the old days, when you didn't have all the computer generated stuff, everything manual, something having switched to manual, correct?
Yes.
It can switch to manual and cruise in. And then whatever the hell it is, I'm on manual. But with all this computer connected stuff, imagine when we go cashless. Imagine what the risks are there. Cashless. That means you will never have possession of your money again. Did you know that?
No.
Not physically. No, not physically. It'll be on your account, and they could do whatever they want to do whenever they want. So if the government gets up one day and says, we don't want people to spend more than $100 per day, what do you think the government is going to do? Anyone?
Oh my word.
They're going to direct the bank to set the AT flicking M because there'll be no tellers. For what?
Yeah.
Set the ATM that nobody gets more than $100 except who they say should get it. Like their people, how about that? So now they start manipulating again, as we usually do, don't we?
Yeah.
But the rest of that's what we say in the Bahamas for you people. So
But
suddenly,
we did that. We did.
This thing that was supposed to be good for us now becomes a risk issue. Because as usual, man will manipulate it sooner or later. Just how they locked us down during the thing, they will say you can only get so much money of your bank account. You upset someone, they'll shut you off. You won't be able to get any money out of your account until somebody gives the approval.
That's what they did with the US dollars.
Yes. Same principle. At least when now that money is still moving around, you can take some, put under your pillow and use some today, use some tomorrow. You control it, correct? You control it. But soon, you will not control it. And even if you have it, they won't take it anymore. Means if I have $500 if we don't take cash, you have to put it into that account that we control. But a lot of persons don't really see it as a risk issue because everything is still what we call hunky-dory. But we know, remember, during the pandemic, in Greece, for example, when the Greek people went to get money from their account, they were only allowed to take certain amounts so they don't take a run on the bank. So the government instructed them, the bankers, to only allow them to get a certain amount of money per day from their own account. They could not take that anymore. How about that? Talk about internal risk. So if your computer systems are not protected, they're going to be hacked, information can be taken, they're going to hold you hostage, and so on. These are real risk issues. All of these. It's a long, bloody list. We talked about recruitment and supply chains. That was external too. Public access to company assets. How do you control that? Because whatever you don't control, people will eventually steal from you. Even while you're controlling, people come with stuff ways to steal. Still a risk. You just minimize it by putting controls in place, but you don't necessarily stop people from doing it completely. Employees, your best friend and your worst enemy, if you're an organization, potentially. Okay. Not to mention your products and services. They have all kinds of risk attached to them depending on what they are. Some organizations provide products and services that are helping money launderers, that are helping terrorists, that are doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And others are offering pure, legitimate products and services that are legal and wonderful. Question is, who's offering what? And why? So, long list of internal and external risk management issues, and we're still not at the end. This thing just keeps going on and on. Okay. By the way, while I remember, let me just say this. I think you have a case study that is assigned to this particular module, yes? True?
Can you repeat that?
I believe you have a case study that's assigned to this module, yes? No?
Yes, I believe I saw it when I was flipping through.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's one at the end of it. Yeah, Smith House Hotel.
Yeah, Smith House Hotel. I guess the goal is for you to try and find some risk issues attached to that particular case study. We'll look at that in our last session for a bit. I might add another interesting case that I believe might be a little bit more intriguing than Smith, and perhaps I may even substitute that one for us to discuss in our final session. So just keep that in mind. That's just kind of designed to get you to think out of the box a little bit and maybe apply some of this crazy stuff that you're learning about risk and management of risk and mitigation of risk. Okay? So, all right. So when you get out there in the real bad, stinky world where you are, which is where you are now, and you see these things, at least you'll hopefully have some tools to help you maneuver. Wait a minute. We've had that discussion. Don't go there. Or I have some alternative ways to look at this. Mr. Chairman of the board. Mr. Wilkinson told me that if I sat on this board, I'd run into people like you, trying to get me to do the wrong bloody thing, just because of the money that you're paying the board member. Sorry, I'm just being the devil's advocate. All right, but it's true. These things happen. So what is the risk management process? How do we go through the process of managing risk? Well, unfortunately, it is not a slam bam, thank you, man thing. And whatever we discuss is only the theoretical side of it. And there's another side of it called the practical side, which is always much more difficult to implement than the theoretical side. Okay? But that's how it is. Suffice it to say that we've seen so many different kinds of risks already, tons of them already. Tied us up for the last forever just looking at them. And we have not exhausted the impact that they can have on organizations. We've just kind of talked about a few things connected to each one of them. There are other things connected to them. And so because there are this myriad of risks, we have to be comfortable in thinking that any risk management program that we have should be designed to add value to the company, to the organization, and to the shareholders and other stakeholders, staff, government, whoever's interested in that firm. And so therefore, whatever management of risk that we have, it should be structured in such a way that it will seek to minimize significantly the risks facing that firm. Okay. So what are some of the things in the process of managing risk that we can expect to see? Quite a few. We have to look at some strategic objectives. We have to assess our risk, analyze it, identify it first, describe it, estimate it, evaluate it, report it, and then look for any threats and opportunities that might exist around it. That's a lot of stuff. What if you're going to be involved, which is why this is one of the reasons why organizations have risk management departments. People whose only job, supposedly, is looking at all of these things and taking steps to protect their firm from the potential dangers of not doing these things, of not managing the risk. Okay? So let's see how some of these things fit into the equation. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of those items, please take a look at these 4 points that I've noted under the risk management process, just to keep in mind as we go forward. Keep in mind that the risk management process involves 4 important steps. This is notwithstanding those 6 steps. Those 6 steps apply before you even get into anything. Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves, period, all the time. These things we're talking about are just things to help us answer those questions. So there are 4 steps to keep in mind as we go through the risk management process. 1, what decisions are we going to take? See, decisions. How will we treat our risk? Are we going to embrace it or run the hell away? Or put our heads in the sand and pretend it's not there? If there's any residual risk, are we going to report it or hide it? And what mechanisms do we have in place to monitor what we've done? To see if question 6 kicks in, what has changed? The only way to know what has changed is to monitor your results. Those organizations that does not have anybody tapping in on these things leave themselves exposed. Some organizations that have risk management departments still find themselves exposed because the departments are inefficient, incompetent, and not doing all the things necessary. Maybe too politically correct. All these kinds of things can impact performance and things we need to do, believe it or not. All right. So what do we mean when we say that we should assess our risk? Just like we assess anything else. Look at it, see what the potential risks are, like Pierre said. If there's another shutdown, Material is in trouble. She needs to go and find an online croupier job. Teach it online or something until things open up again. But the point is, we have to give consideration to all the possibilities. And that's really kind of what we're talking about. Okay, so we assess it. We look at where do they lie for our organization and how are we going to deal with it. But once we do that assessment, again, I mentioned to you that this should start at the top of the organization, not the middle, not the bottom. Middle and the bottom could contribute. They should be asked to contribute. But really, it should be channeled and driven from the top. These things that we're talking about. Okay? So once the assessment is done, then we can analyze our situation. How do we analyze it? Well, we basically identify or seek to identify and describe our risk. Notice another long list to identify and describe our risk. Name it. What is the name of our risk? What do we call it? Is it a risk that the company will go into bankruptcy like Enron? Is it a risk that somebody in the accounting department or the senior CFO level might give instructions to cook the accounting records to reflect incorrect information so that they can get bigger bonuses? Is it, what is the name of our risk? Is it that we have too many incompetent staff members who are not capable of doing the job well? Is it that our frontline staffs are very unfriendly and treating customers like dirt, like Vitalco? Name the risk. That's what the analysis is all about. What is the extent of the risk scope? What is the nature of the risk? How does it feel, touch, and seem? Who are the stakeholders who are affected by this? Can we quantify the risk in dollars and cents? Can we tolerate it? What is our appetite for it? Do we have a low appetite for the risk and therefore we don't want to deal with it at all? Or do we have a high tolerance level where we allow it to go too far? How do we treat it? How do we control it? This monster called risk. What actions should we take to improve upon our risk that currently face us? And what kind of strategies are we going to put in place to protect us from any major loss? Major loss could be things like reputation, customers, licenses from regulators, those kinds of heavy consequences. Okay? A few people, customers leave and go to a live, nobody worries about it. But if you're a financial institution, your behavior can cause you a bank license. That is a big problem. Because when you lose your bank license or your financial services license, even if you try to go to another jurisdiction and they do due diligence, they're going to come right back to where you lost your license. And the current regulator, whomever, will say, well, this is why it happened. So it will follow you. Okay? So these things are critical. Again, why companies in current time are constantly looking to isolate the risk management function so that they can keep their fingers, presumably, on all of these issues. Some try, some make a considered effort, and some are not trying at all. They're still doing their own thing. How about that? Which is why regulators are still running up and down trying to find out who's following the rules and who's not, in whichever area it might be. Okay? Including gaming, by the way. We have gaming regulators, in case you didn't know, who monitor the casinos to see if they're doing things according to the policy and the rules. Because casinos, too, have their own thing going on. And if nobody checks them, all kinds of risky stuff take place. In fact, risky stuff takes place with people checking. Okay? That's how invasive risk is. Very invasive. Okay? So, once we do our assessment, then our analysis, now we can do our estimation. What does that mean? Can we quantify it in whole or in part? Fully, quantitative, in part, semi-quantitative. What is the probability? Can we assess what is the likelihood that will happen? And if it does, what are the consequences? Should we include earthquake insurance in the Bahamas? That's a good question. Question for the class. Should insurance companies in the Bahamas include earthquake in their insurance policy and charge you a greater premium? Anyone?
No.
I don't think so.
No, and the question is, why not?
The probability of us having an earthquake is very low.
Yes.
Thank you. The probability of us having an earthquake is very low because we've not had it in our experience. Does that mean it cannot happen? Of course it can happen. But about probabilities, no. Haiti, yes. Other Caribbean countries, a couple of them. Other countries, definitely. But not here yet. So any policy in the Bahamas that has earthquake with a premium attached to it, I don't know. I don't know what culture that is. Needs to be investigated, perhaps. See why they would do that, given that the probability is so low. Students, see my point? So don't presume when those guys go to their board meetings that they are planning to scalp us. What do I mean by scalp? Anybody knows?
Take advantage.
Of course. Why not? Do they really love us? Anyone? Do companies like insurance companies and banks now, do they really love us?
No, they're in the business to make money.
They're in the business to make money at any cost. And if it means getting more than they should get, they will not lose any sleep. They do it all the time, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another risk. And how do we mitigate it? Sometimes we can't. We're stuck. Other times we can find alternatives and substitutes and other ways to get around it. Like with the gas situation, how can we mitigate that particular situation anyway? The high gas prices in the Bahamas. How can we mitigate or work around it? Or are we stuck?
On a personal level, or
Yeah, on a personal level.
I think just really plan out the places you have to go. Unnecessary driving, maybe
Yeah,
carpool.
absolutely, Nikita. There's a way around it. Carpooling, don't driving up and down like Sunday drives, like Sunday, no, stop that. Okay, if you were driving up and down 3 and 4 times a day to go to work, to do this, do that, do the other thing, then stop doing some of that. So yeah, there are ways around it, okay, for sure. And I'm sure if this continues, people will find creative ways or suffer the consequences. Okay. All right. Estimation, consequences, threats, and opportunities, they all fall under estimation. What are the threats? What are the opportunities? What are the ratings for the probabilities? Are they high? Are they medium? Are they low? Are they likely? Are they possible? Are they remote? These are all issues that will determine what kinds of risks we'll take, entities will take, individuals will take in trying to mitigate risk. All of this stuff is all part and parcel, part of the risk management process. Believe it or not, okay? It's a very dynamic area, but for many people, it can be cumbersome for them because they sometimes grow tired of trying to figure out all the related risks and how to treat them. But like everything else, we can't. That's like an accountant saying they're tired of debits and credits. I'm tired of debits and credits. But when you get tired of debits and credits, it's time to leave the profession because there's no way around it. There's no way around financial statements. There's no way around a bit of monotony from time to time that comes with the territory. Okay? And risk management and mitigation is no different. It comes with the territory. And those of us who want to be most effective and protect our organizations, ourselves, etc., we're going to have to take those steps to deal with it no matter how painful, tedious, or monotony might seem from time to time. All right. So, how does risk profiling come into play after all of that? Risk profiling. You know what? I think I'm going to take, I've been yapping all evening. Nikita,
Yes, sir.
give your lecture a break and do a little reading on the risk profile. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just start at the top, risk analysis methods and techniques.
Risk analysis methods and techniques. A range of techniques can be used to analyze risk. These can be specific to upside or downside risk or be capable of dealing with both. Risk profile. The result of the risk analysis process can be used to produce a risk profile, which gives a significance rating to each risk and provides a tool for prioritizing risk treatment efforts. This ranks each identified risk so as to give a view of the relative importance.
Now, before you go on, notice each identified risk, which means that we shouldn't be operating helter-skelter. We shouldn't be closing our eyes and feeling around in the dark. We should be clear on what the risks are, and we should be, as an organization or otherwise, in agreement. First, that is the only way you're going to treat it and deal with it effectively. Okay? All right, keep going. Risk evaluation.
Compare the estimated risk against risk criteria which the organization has established. The risk criteria may include associated costs and benefits, legal requirements, socioeconomic and environmental factors, concerns of stakeholders, etc. Risk evaluation, therefore, is used to make decisions about the significance of risk to the organization and whether each specific risk should be accepted or treated.
Interesting. Which means that there are certain risk issues that should not be accepted, obviously, and not be treated. The challenge comes in determining what should be accepted or not, what should be treated or not, and what exactly do we do to treat them. All right, keep going.
Risk reporting and communication. You have the internal reporting, which includes the board of directors, business units, and individuals. And external reporting. A company needs to report to its stakeholders on a regular basis, setting out its risk management policies and the effectiveness in achieving its objectives.
So you can see then that not only is it important to identify, evaluate, and assess our risk issues, but we need to tell who needs to know. That's another thing. There are a lot of firms walking around with information that they should be telling the appropriate people inside and outside the firm, and they're not doing it. They are hiding it. They are ignoring it. They are sweeping it under the rug, like Enron. Sweeping it under the rug. Imagine the amount of lying that took place in that $74 billion firm. How dare them? My. Okay? So it isn't good enough to just know what your risks are. You have to tell through reporting and communicating the appropriate people. So the board should have it in the minutes, should be clear, but everybody's on the same page as to what's going on. All the business units, if there's more than one, need to be advised. And whatever individuals or staff or whomever needs to know, they need to know. It's amazing how much information is hidden from people who need to know. Okay. Same thing with external reporting. There are stakeholders out there who are relying on the integrity of the organization and the organization telling them the truth about what's going on. Top of the list, shareholders. Shareholders don't work or operate within the organization. They are the owners of the firm, and they rely on the board of directors whom they've selected to look after their interests. Unfortunately, many boards seem to forget that that is the process and exclude shareholders as stakeholders from the information process. Sometimes they even hide the policies and procedures that have been put into place, if they have been put into place. They don't tell them what they need to know. These are our plans with regards to risk mitigation in your company, Mr. Shareholders. They attend shareholder meetings and hide information on purpose, depending on their agendas. You'll be surprised to know what agendas exist at the board level and the amount of risk that it creates for firms on a daily basis. Some of them succeed with the madness, and others go under like the Titanic, Enron, others. Okay, you'll be shocked. And some of them have taken down with them very reputable accounting firms who decided that they'd let companies like Enron use their money to influence them to make wrong decisions as independent auditors, which created an even greater risk and contributed to the failures and the bankruptcies that occurred. Imagine that. The board buying out the bloody auditors. Who the hell is supposed to buy out? Any kind of discussion about audit independence that comes into jeopardy is a major risk for any firm. We cannot have that. Auditors must remain independent. You cannot threaten them like, if you don't come back next year, you won't get this $10 million job. If you do what we say and hide some stuff and don't report it as you should, we'll take you to Waikiki with dancing girls in bikinis or whatever. You can't do that. Anything that inhibits the independence of a firm's auditors is a major problem right off the top. And firms continue to suffer from that nonsense as we speak. It's a major, major 21st century problem, as even worse than the 20th century. In case you didn't know, not all auditors who come in are doing the things that they should do. And it's usually not necessarily the auditors who come in to do the legwork in the firm. It's those partners at the top of the audit firm who put companies in jeopardy, audit firms, because they allow management at the board level in many of these organizations to influence their independence. And when an auditor loses his or her independence, then all is lost for everybody who has an interest in that firm potentially. Okay? Something to think about. A lot of times people, when they think about risk, they don't think that the auditors are a part of that problem, but they are. One of these days when you get around to doing some more stuff, or maybe doing the audit course, that's something I would suggest you guys do. And if audit offers an auditing pro course, like an entry level, something to think about, find out what's going on in that part of the world. Audits, on it, and the risk connected there too. Okay, keep going, Nakia.
Okay. Next, we have risk treatment. Risk treatment is the process of selecting and implementing measures to modify the risk. Risk treatment includes as its major element, risk control and mitigation, but extends further to risk avoidance, risk transfer, risk financing, etc. Note, risk financing refers to the mechanisms for funding the financial consequences of risk. Risk financing is not generally considered to be the provision of funds to meet the cost of implementing risk treatment.
By the way, which is interesting because a lot of people think so. It is not that. It is just the absorbing of the cost of not doing the proper things that you're required to do. Not necessarily that you're being given funding to cover risk issues. Okay? Very interesting distinction and important one to know. Okay? Treatment of risk, a lot of people believe is just like something casual, but there's nothing casual about treating risk at all, because in order to properly treat risk, you have to properly assess risk, just like a doctor. And some doctors do not do a great job at assessing the problem, and then they start giving treatments that are inconsistent with the problem because the proper diagnosis is yet to be made. Yet some doctors actually give people medicines based on incorrect diagnosis. How about that? Let's talk risk. Is going into the hospital risky? Anyone?
Yep, 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once upon a time, we used to have this conversation that certain operations are just routine. Is that still true? Are they still just routine? Not necessarily. Because some people have gone in for routine operations and never came out alive. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Some have come out alive, but they've come out with all kinds of other problems for some reason as a result of what was supposed to be a routine operation. So like the plane going down, we'd like to think that when we go in for a routine situation, that all will be well, and oftentimes all is well. But oftentimes all is not well. And oftentimes that all is not well is not because it shouldn't have been well, but because depending on who's executing, just like in the firm, things get a little messed up. Incompetence, inefficiency, pride, or any other number of crazy stuff, just like in the firm. Okay. So this risk treatment thing is crucial, but again, just like in medicine, don't seek to treat your risk without finding out and being sure what the hell the risk is, because sometimes in making risk assessments, management makes the wrong assessment. And a lot of times they don't want to get a second opinion from, for example, people like you, employees. Excuse me. Can you tell us what you think about this? Man, they think that's beyond them. That hell we going on getting an employee's down the lines opinion. We are the board. We cannot lower ourselves to be seeking an opinion from our staff. Okay, risk treatment, very serious stuff. Don't mess with that until you've made the proper diagnosis, and that's not always easy. All right, keep going, Nikita.
Monitoring and review of the risk management process. Effective risk management requires a reporting and review structure to ensure that risks are effectively identified and assessed, and that appropriate controls and responses are in place. Regular audits of policy and standards compliance should be carried out, and standards performance reviewed to identify opportunities for improvement.
I think that pretty much speaks for itself. What can I say about that except the same bloody thing? It's as clear as sin. And most organizations who are charged with that responsibility have a pretty good idea that it's as clear as sin. The problem is not its clarity, but rather what is the objective of the decision makers when they are confronted with such clarity? What causes them not to follow through despite the clarity of it? That is the question. All right. So thank you very much, Nikita. Thank you very much. Give me a break. So what then should we consider to be the structure that is necessary to administer this risk management process? And some people have said structure. What the hell do you mean structure? Why did we just say all that other stuff all night? Do we need more? And the answer is yes, there's more. I wish I could say we've already said more than enough, which we have, but there is more that is necessary. And what is that structure? Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are mentioned here that I pulled out because I thought that they represented the best or the an appropriate structure. What is best, again, is relative, but an appropriate structure for managing risk. And usually, if you want to do a pretty good job of managing risk, like everything else, it should be in writing. There should be a risk management policy in every firm. Has anybody in this class ever seen your company's risk management policy? Anyone has ever seen it?
Probably. Is that,
Probably.
pardon?
Probably, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, what probably means yes or no.
Well, you know those bunch of forms HR gives you to sign and you just sign them to get them out of your hair?
Right.
I'm thinking one of them,
The
maybe.
risk management something.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maud, for raising that point. Because yes, we sign a bunch of stuff just to get that thing out of the way. Nobody complains anything. HR is just HRing to get finished. They're bloody fed up with some other stuff anyway. Whatever the case might be, just sign here, sign here, sign here. Nobody knows what the hell they're signing necessarily. You may or may not get copies. You may or may not know what the hell you're signing and all this kind of stuff. So absolutely true. And maybe there's something about risk, something in there somewhere, perhaps not. Perhaps not in that particular scenario, which makes it even more interesting because it only confirms, based on what you're saying, which you're probably all familiar with to some extent, that the average employee does not see a risk management policy. And to some extent, that's because it's hidden from them. Not they're not exposed to it, or there is none. There is no risk management policy. You would be surprised how many medium and large entities have no written risk management policy. And many of them that do have one, it's a generic one that they pulled out of Google, has nothing to do with that firm. Because they figure they could pull off somebody else's risk management policy and make it their own. Well, that's like me dancing like James Brown and saying I'm him. It doesn't work that way. Okay. So that would be interesting to walk into your firm tomorrow and raise some eyebrows by asking to see the firm's current risk management policy. And there'll be one that says, isn't this the person that we paid for that course for? Like, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Now they're asking for a risk management policy. Don't they know that we don't have one, or we don't let other people see it? That only certain people get to see it? Should only certain people see the risk management policy, anyone? Or should everybody see it?
Everyone.
Yeah, everyone should see it. Should not be a big old stinky secret, which in many organizations policies seem to be for some reason. You ask to see a certain policy, they look at you and like, why? Aren't you busy enough? What do you need to see the policy for? I'm your policy. Just do what I say. And or some such thing. And so you still don't ever get to see it. So if you're gonna administer the risk management process properly, whether you're in charge of risk management or you're just interested and affected by it, there must be a written policy. Secondly, it doesn't matter what kind of policy you write. If the board is not involved, dog eat your lunch. The board must support what's in the policy. Sadly, you have to get the head on board. Many organizations who suffer because they cannot get the head on board. The head size is going to go where it wants to go, not necessarily where it should go. So board involvement is absolutely critical. Otherwise, you're going to have an unstructured risk management process. And I don't know which is worse, no risk management process or one that is unstructured. Okay. Number 3, consider the business units. Here, we're saying that the business units are the primary control of risks. In other words, they are on the front line, wherever they are. And therefore, we should rely on them. Give them the policy. Give them the board support. Give them everything they need to get the job done of managing risk. Out there. See? Out there. Because they will be the primary controllers of risks. Board will send policy, but the board is not out there. The policy that is written will have all the information, but the policy is on the shelf. It is not out there. The units are out there. The branches are out there. The frontline people are out there. They're the ones who control the kind of risk that you're going to have and how to mitigate them. In fact, if they're not properly brought in line, trained, and directed, they will create more risks than control for your organization. Like those frontline Patelco bloody staffers. Okay? I wonder if the management of Patelco is aware of the kinds of risks that they are presenting from a competitive perspective and an employee perspective to the public and to the firm itself. I wonder. And when they sit at their board meetings, do they even consider that at all? And I'm just picking on Patelco because they're just one in a gazillion everywhere in the world, somewhere. Okay? The fourth thing that you need if your risk management process is going to work, don't forget, outside of those 6 questions at the beginning, that's just to get things warmed up. Now this is the process, because getting warmed up is only one part of the process. And that's another problem. A lot of organizations keep getting warmed up, but they never go through the process. That's interesting. They go to board meetings, have staff meetings, everybody gets warmed up, riled up, until it's time to go through the process, and then things go dead. Deadly quiet. Too quiet. Dies off somewhere until everybody gets riled up again. Sounds like politics. Everything goes dead after election day until it's time for another election day. So step number 4. Once the policy is written, notice I said written and in place. Once we have the board on board, how's that? The board on board. Once we communicate to all of the business units, all of the persons who are going to be impacted, all of those frontline people who are going to be controlling these risks out there, we need to give them the resources that they need to do the jobs they need to do, and then do it. See? My. See these 5 steps again? Second most critical part. Those 6 questions I gave you at the beginning, that's just to warm you up. These 5 steps is for anybody in an organization of any kind who is bold enough to seek to do it for real. Because I can assure you, students, these 5 points are easier said than done. Can they be done? Of course. Are organizations doing it? Many. Completely? Hardly. Sufficiently? Sometimes. Okay? It's a real challenge. But then everything that's important is a challenge. Risk management, no less, especially risk. And then finally, once you put the resources in, to see those first 3, you can't get any of that done without the proper resources, money, staffing, equipment, whatever you need to do to get the job done. Then implement, do it. Do it, see, implement. But it doesn't stop at implementation, because many organizations, they provide resources, they implement, do all the other stuff, but they don't go back to control the situation. They don't go back to check to see if there were any changes. See, number 6, what change? Is it working? Do we need to tweak it? Do we need to make any adjustments? Do we need to stop and start over again? And usually, this is typically the role of the internal audit department, not necessarily only internal audit. But we like to start with them to go back and see if the thing is working the way we want it to work. And it's internal audit who will then report to the board as to whether or not the structure and the administration of the risk management process is working. How about that? Okay. So you have a big old set of questions at the beginning, a mouthful of internal and external risks, a whole bunch of evaluation assessments and all that crazy stuff, profiling. And then on top of that, now we have the real McCoy, which is structuring it and then administering it. And it's no reason why many firms, small, medium, and large, and super large, try to avoid some of this stuff because this is not necessarily easy to do. To set up and to monitor and to provide feedback and to make changes when necessary, and sometimes to sweep the whole thing clean and start again, depending on what's going on. Wow. Question. We have had some young guys killing each other like flies. The police have said that they are part of a gang. Okay, fine. But they're dying nevertheless. They were once little boys in their cribs, little innocent children going to primary school, saying good morning, Mrs. Johnson, stuff very innocent. And then somewhere along the way, they became the monsters that they were allowed to grow into. Well, now that they're grown up, nobody's interested in how they became that way. They have to take responsibility for being that way. The question to you is, are there any risks involved in that situation with these guys in the Commonwealth? Or that's just another passing fancy that we don't need to be concerned with? Anyone? Be bold, say whatever. Remember, if you're going to be an advisor, financial services to your clients, you have to be bold. How about that? So, is there any risk?
Of course.
What kind of risk do you think that situation presents to us, the Bahamas, individuals?
Well, you have an increased threat of crime.
Indeed.
Another risk is they are able to recruit more young men
Yes.
from even an earlier age to continue on and to continue these gangs on.
Indeed. Now it becomes like risk management becomes a what? Culture. See? Culture. Remember that one we saw earlier? Culture.
Yeah.
Kiss my foot. Absolutely. Make no mistake. And those are just some of the beginning of the rumblings of the risks. Not to mention the risk that they might decide one day in one of their, after they have their seance or whatever they do, like whoa, their weapons that they get from God knows where, they might decide to start coming through our neighborhoods, correct?
Yeah.
And just start shooting randomly for the hell of it. How's that? So the potential risk, see, that's my point. We've been talking about it from an organizational level, but be assured that it doesn't stop at an organizational level in any country. See? And remember, whether we think about it that way or not, doesn't matter in so much as it's possible that it can happen. It has happened elsewhere. It is festering here. And if we're going to be thinking about profiling it, we have to be thinking about the fact that it could spill into the residential areas outside of their little environments. So when we're sleeping, like after class, we go and say, oh man, that was a long freaking day. And Mr. Wilkinson, another 3 hours of yapping. Let me take a shower and go and lie down. And then suddenly, on any given night. And so the question is then, looking at this page with structure and administration, how do we administer and manage that kind of risk and the potential chaos that it can create? Remember, it's like a plane crash. Nothing might happen. You fly across the doggone Atlantic and land. So man, that was a long 10-hour flight. and you land safely. So nothing happens. Or 45 minutes into a smooth flight, right? The thing just goes down. Be assured that that is how risk works. And sometimes even our best intentions, but we still have to try. And so I just kind of use that example just to take you out of the organization for a moment. Just rest assured that those guys who are in gangs, do you know that they're part of an organization? Do you know that, folks?
Yeah,
All
their
right.
gang is their organization.
Of course. And anybody who doesn't want to see it that way, then they're short-sighted in terms of being able to what? Assess the risk, correct?
Mhm.
Absolutely. An organization sometimes face a similar thing from another perspective. See, from a financial, cultural, internal, external, whatever it is. If the financial institution is not considering these things and they're involved in all kinds of ethical behavior that can ultimately destroy the company and all this kind of stuff, even though you're trying to do all the other risk mitigating stuff, but yet on the other hand, you're running your own unethical programs. Sooner or later, your unethical, sneaky, greedy, thieving, whatever ways it is going to override any efforts made by others to manage risk. And they will bring the ship down like they did with Enron and many others. My. I'll end on this note. Then I'll let you guys go and have whatever you do, something warm to drink. It's been a long day. You guys have been great. But let me just end on this note, and then we'll pick it up next week. I heard a news report today about the police reservists. Has anybody heard that?
No, I didn't hear that one.
Anybody else heard it? No?
No, no.
Well, according to a news report, breaking news like CNN, except it was in the Bahamas, breaking news on whatever station that was, they said that it has been discovered that there were scores and scores and scores of police reservists who were on the payroll for up to 2 years or more, collecting monies that they should not have been collecting for jobs that they were not doing. And many of them, most of them were retired officers. Some believe that the monies that were made were perhaps a couple of $1 million altogether over time. Now, this is a risk class. What happened there? Anyone? How did that happen? How could that have happened?
There wasn't any controls in place?
There were no controls in place, obviously. But that was not the only problem, correct? In order for something that big to happen, there must have been what else going on? Starts with C.
Corruption?
Yes. Also known as collusion, which oftentimes lead to corruption. Welcome to the world of risk management. Who then was responsible for managing that risk? And how did they get away with it? How about that? I'll leave that with you guys to ponder. And then next week, we'll pick up some more of this stuff on risk management. It is a very invasive topic. You could hardly ever run out of things to say about it. Long after we're done, there'll be more issues attached to risk. And whether you like it or not, it will be swirling around you every single bloody day. So good luck out there. Please be safe. And I'll see you guys next week, same time. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Guys,
Good
take
night,
care.
all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Maud, are you still there?
Yes,
Weren't you in one of my other classes, Maud?
yes, I was.
I thought I recognized that name. Which class was that?
Corporate,
Governance.
yeah, and financial, yeah.
Oh, yes,
Literacy, yes.
indeed. Absolutely.
And they have chatted, we work right across the street from each other
Where are you?
downtown, Frederick Street.
Oh, you're at Fidelity across the street?
Yes,
You are kidding me.
yes, Mr. Wilkinson, we've chatted at least three times.
What? When you see me again, stop me in my tracks. Tell me to take off my mask so I could see you. Serious?
Yes,
It's a good thing I didn't do anything out of the way. I would have been stuck.
yeah, we chatted in the parking lot. I remember, and then we chatted it right across the street.
Stop
mean-
the mask. That was you, Maud?
Yes, that was.
Wow, these bloody masks need to go so we can see each other. The next time you see me, please let me see the Maud I saw in corporate governance, not masks.
I sure will. Yes,
Sounds good.
yes.
Take care.
I was trying to confirm with Miguel. I just want to be sure. So that means we're no longer having Saturday classes. It's just going to be Thursdays.
From what I can see, I think all the Saturday classes are done.
Okay.
I think the Saturday classes probably existed at the beginning for Checkley and maybe the other guy that perhaps was a better time for them, I believe.
Yes, okay.
But yeah, I think the rest of the classes will be on Thursdays.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
You too, and I'll see you next week.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.